Hey guys, just gonna wait for everybody to join. Just so you know, this stream is going to be without any safety measures because they're broken right now. I'm going to be ignoring the speed limits that Dovetail Games put in because a lot of them are wrong right now. And I'm just going to operate the train as if everything was a clear signal. I'm going to follow the speed limits accordingly, and it should be much more enjoyable than the way it's played right now in the scenarios. So we'll just give it a few minutes for everybody to start joining. Yeah, so I'm starting at New Rochelle. I'm gonna head west. Give it a couple more minutes, and then I'll get this started. It's starting to snow outside pretty good too. I like it. I looked at the forecast. We're supposed to get between, I don't know, like 5 to 9 inches of snow. Alright, let's get this going. I know there's not that many people watching, but they'll join if they want to. Thanks for joining us, Eds, Chase. Nice to see you guys. Alright, so this is 45-mile-an-hour track. We're on track number 2 heading west. We're going to be merging into the Hellgate line at 45 miles per hour. There is a dead section coming up right before Manor interlocking, so we will comply with that. I'm going to be completely ignoring the speed limits that Dovetail Games has in place because they are wrong, and that signal is wrong. It should be flashing green, not a steady green. There's a lot of issues, guys, but I've been reporting them to the devs and they should be fixed. Alright, so we're coming up on the dead section, so I'm going to put the main circuit breaker into the open position and then put the throttle in idle. So we have to coast through a dead section, because if we try to draw power through catenary that has no voltage flowing through it, it can cause a lot of issues. Hey Matt, nice of you to join us. So we're just about at the end of the dead section. The dead section ends right about here at East Limits Manor. So now I can put the main circuit breaker back into closed, and we can resume on our way. Now the speed limit here is 100 miles per hour. Not 70, I think is what they put in here. But this curve coming up right here is 70. After this curve, there are 3 undergrade bridges where the speed limit is 80. It's kind of weird how the lighting changes today. Like, really, really bright. Alright, so speed limit right now should be 80. And then once we clear that curve right there, speed limit goes back to 100. The MCB, the main circuit breaker, has to be put into the open position when you go through a dead section. You also need to have the throttle set to idle. You cannot be drawing voltage through the pantograph when you're going through a dead section. So we're probably going to get to around 90 miles an hour before we have to brake, because there's a 45 mile an hour curve at Pelham Bay. So I like to brake maybe a couple seconds after I pass these distance signals from Manor. Alright, so we're starting to brake for the 45 mile an hour curve at Pelham Bay. I don't know if the catenary style is correct here. Wow, and those brakes applied a lot harder than I thought they were going to apply. That was only half suppression, too. But we've met the requirement. We're coming up on Pelham Bay right now. So right at this curve is where 45 miles an hour takes effect. After this curve, we're going to be authorized to go 70 miles an hour for a brief period of time, and then we have a 60 mile an hour curve. Yeah, Eds, they're very, very effective. Overly effective, I think, and I've heard that a couple times. Yeah, I did do an emergency brake earlier, Eds, and it was pretty crazy. So yeah, 70 miles an hour here, 60 mile an hour curve up ahead. And our windshield just got destroyed by a tree. Alright, so coming into the 60 mile an hour curve right around milepost 14. Again, assuming that all the signals here are clear. Now after the curve we get back up to 70 miles an hour, and it stays at 70 miles an hour until right around milepost 11, where there is a bridge and then a curve that's 55 into another curve that's 60, and then we get back up to 70 for a little bit and then back down to 60. So it's a little bit, it fluctuates a little bit. But this all here is 70. No, there aren't any mileposts there, but just know the territory. Alright, so coming up here, this next curve, the track that I am on stays 70, but if you're on the opposite track, it is a 65 mile an hour curve. Because that curve is a little bit sharper than this one, so they had to lower it by 5. Coming up here, though, this next curve after the bridge is 55. Then we'll get back up to 60, a very brief section of 70. It's not worth accelerating to 70 there, so we're just going to stay 60. Then it goes back to 60 as we approach Hellgate. Hi, Penn Central, nice of you to join us. So right about here, milepost 10 is where the speed limit goes back up to 70, and then right up here at this curve is where it goes back down to 60. So as you can see, it's not really worth it to accelerate past 60 before you got to get back down there again. Yeah, Chase, it's very, very nice playing without the alerter and ATC and access right now. Dovetail Games is going to fix it though, so just got to give it time. Alright, so we're passing Oak Point Yard right now. We're coming up on the approach to Hellgate, right around milepost 9. Hey Jeff, nice of you to join us. So these are the block signals at milepost 9. Coming up on the approach to Hellgate, this curve up here, pretty sharp curve, mind you, is a 40 mile an hour curve. So in real life there is signage saying that a section coming up is a dead section. In the game though, there is no signage warning you about dead sections. There is another dead section coming up in a few minutes once we get on the other side of Hellgate Bridge. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So once we get past that curve, the speed limit goes back up to 60. And it stays at 60 until the curve up there before the span, where it drops down to 50. Hi Elijah, nice of you to join us. Alright, so we're coming into the 50-mile-an-hour curve, and once we get onto the span after this curve, it goes back up to 60. Northeast Regional Service passing us now. Track number 2. Alright, so this is where the speed limit goes back up to 60. So there is a dead section coming up here. It's the last dead section before New York Penn. The area between New York Penn and Washington, D.C., all the catenary is in phase. So if anybody knows anything about electricity, you know that electricity sources need to be in phase. Otherwise, you need a phase break in between power suppliers. And that's what these are. Well, this one up here at Bowery Bay is a voltage change. They're actually changing the frequency of the voltage in the overhead wires. Alright, so coming up here, I'm going to put the main circuit breaker into the open position again, and I'm going to put the throttle into idle, which I already have it. Dead section's coming up, it's not quite here yet. And the other thing is I'm going to prepare to brake for the 55-mile-an-hour curve at East Limits Gate. So we're in the dead section right about now. Notice, main circuit breaker is open, throttle is idle. About the third pole in the curve is where the dead section ends. Alright, so I'm good now. Close the main circuit breaker. We're getting an approach medium at gate. I'm going to ignore it because I know that's not the case. It doesn't happen. Got to slow down for the 50-mile-an-hour curve. So coming up here, we're going to go downhill a little bit on our way to the east limits of Harold interlocking. Once we hit the interlocking signal, the speed limit does drop to 45. I'm keeping my speed in check because the grade here changes pretty drastically. Correct, Eds. There is no simulated voltage change in the route. Alright, so we're coming down into Harold interlocking. That's the signal, the home signal for the east limits of Harold. It is showing medium clear. That is not the case in real life. Right here you're going to see, I believe it's approach limited. But right here I do want to be doing 45. So in real life, for an Amtrak train, right up here, that signal up there that shows clear is going to be limited clear. And you would switch over to the track that would bring you into line 2 of the East River tunnels. For some reason, Dovetail Games decided that we're only going to be using lines 3 and 4, which are normally used for Long Island Railroad. You can't even really use lines 1 and 2. I've ran up and down them on foot, but for some reason you can't path your train to go through lines 1 and 2. So normally I would switch right there onto that track. That would take me into line 2. But I'm on the path right now to go into line 4. So I am authorized to go up to 60 miles per hour. That is the correct speed limit here. And we are on the approach to line 4. We're coming into F interlocking in a little bit. Just leaving Harold interlocking. So these are the home signals to F interlocking. So we're going to be heading into line 4 in a moment. The speed throughout the entire East River Tunnel, regardless of the line, is 60 miles per hour. Alright, so we've entered the portal, and we are starting to descend under the East River in a moment. The dynamic brake isn't working as well as I'd hoped, so I'm going to use the auto brake. Alright, so that signal that we just passed is one of the issues. If you noticed, it had both the red and yellow bulbs illuminated on the top portion of the signal. That's incorrect. That is something that should be fixed. Alright, so at this point we're going underneath the East River. Crossing the East River to get into Manhattan. We were just in Queens, New York. We go under the East River to get into Manhattan. That curve was extremely long. Is that signal out? Yeah, that signal is completely out. Yeah, I didn't even keep track of where I was. I'm gonna go over speed here. It's not a big deal though. Actually, I just made it. Shit. Man, those brakes are powerful as hell. Whoa. Yeah, it serves me right for not braking properly. Throttle is glitching again. Alright, there we go. Sorry about that. So I was supposed to slow down to, I didn't keep track of my location. I was supposed to slow down to 15 miles an hour for when I cleared the tunnel portal. And then coming into Penn Station. 15 miles an hour, all the way through. It's engage reverse thrusters. Alright, so as I said before, Amtrak doesn't typically take Line 4 into Penn Station. That's usually reserved for Long Island Railroad. Amtrak will take Line 2 into Penn Station and Line 1 out of Penn Station. But it's fine. It's not a huge deal. So we're coming into our platform. We're going to sound the bell. And that's fine, I'm just going to pass the stop signal. It's not a big deal. I'm going to start a new scenario anyway. Starting from, I don't think you can start a scenario or a service from New York. Unless I pick up a train from New York. I don't know if that's possible. Let me see if I can pick up a service from Penn Station heading west. That's the train I want! What are you doing? Alright, fine. I'll just do a service. It leaves right away. I'll just do one starting from Newark Airport. That was funny. Alright, so I'm starting here now at Newark Airport. I'm going to be heading east to New York Penn Station. Just set this bad boy up while our passengers load. Same deal as last time. Not going to have automatic train control or access enabled at all. They're in a buggy state right now, but that's fine. We're also going to be ignoring any incorrect speed limits. We're going to be following the correct speed limits and operate this as if it was a normal service. All clear signals. It's going to be a good time. Alright, it wants us to wait another 40 seconds or so before we depart. That's fine. So one thing I do want to point out really quick before we depart is this track is 90 miles an hour. It wants us to switch tracks up there at Hunter at 30 miles an hour, medium clear signal. Right here in this signal block, we should have approach medium as our cab signal aspect, but it shows clear, and then the braking curve is taking effect too. It's just a whole mess. I made a whole post about it on the forum, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, but these systems, they're in a very, very bad state right now. Alright, so let's go. Just so you know, I will not be stopping at Secaucus. Even though it wants me to stop at Secaucus, these trains do not stop at Secaucus. Alright, the other thing is, I know from just playing this, that it's going to want me to switch here at Hunter from number 1 track, which I'm on now, to number 2 track at 30 miles an hour. The signal appears medium clear. Hunter is actually a 45 mile an hour movement, not 30. So I am going to switch tracks as if I'm going is if I have a limited clear signal. So, in real life right now, if I was switching tracks, the cab signal aspect would show approach limited, and right here would be limited clear, which is red on top, solid red on top with flashing green on the bottom. So this switch is rated for 45. After the curve, it goes back up to 70. And not after the curve, after I switch tracks, it goes back up to 70. Alright, so I'm still in the limits of Hunter interlocking, heading east. So I'm coming up on Cliff interlocking. Now this signal aspect is correct. Approach medium. So I am going to brake to conform with approach medium, which is a 45 mile an hour aspect. Now you might have been doing your research and you say, hey, you're wrong. Medium speed is 30, not 45. There's a caveat with approach medium where you can go 45, but you have to be going 30 by the time you reach the next signal. So it makes it so you're not delayed as much. But I will be braking to go 30 by the time I reach that next signal, which is correctly displayed as medium clear. So I will be going 30 by the time I hit that signal. And we're going to be going on over to Newark Penn Trek 2, which is a 30 mile per hour movement. Now the Amtrak employee timetable states that for all New Jersey passenger stations, you have to do one sound of the horn before approaching a station, and then as per rule number 20, you have to sound the bell through the station like any other station. So we are coming into Newark Penn. Alright, so we're stopped at Newark Penn, waiting for the passengers to get on. We have a clear signal ahead of us at East Dock. Current speed limit here is 35, but once we get onto the Passaic River Bridge, it speeds up to 45. And it stays that way all the way until we get through Rhea interlocking. Hey Andy, nice of you to join us. No, we are heading east, and our next scheduled stop is Secaucus, but we are not going to be stopping at Secaucus. Alright, so we're heading over the Passaic River Bridge. Once the train clears this point, we'll be cleared to go 45 miles an hour. And it's cleared that way all the way through Rhea interlocking. Once we hit that straightaway, we'll be able to go 60. So there is a 30-mile-an-hour restriction up here that Dovetail Games put into the route. It does not exist in real life. This section is all 45 on this track. Alright, so once we clear this curve, we'll be authorized to go 60 miles per hour. One thing I do like are the airplanes flying over. That's a pretty neat little effect. So we're getting cab speed as an indication, and the sea lights on the left-hand side are illuminated. That's very, very wrong. Unless the cab signaling system fails, those sea lights should never illuminate. What those sea lights mean is that in the event that the cab signals fail, it's an indication to the engineer that the route is clear to the next interlocking, which in this case would be clear from Rhea to Hudson, because this is the west limits of Hudson interlocking right here, where the sea light is also illuminated. Clear to the next interlocking. But the cab signaling system hasn't failed. It's just a bug with the programming of those sea lights. So we're coming up on east limits Hudson, coming into the curve here. Now another thing that was messed up was the transition from 60 miles per hour to 90 miles per hour. So at New York milepost 7.7, there's actually a little hut coming up over here. It's just before this overhead highway is where the speed transitions to 90 miles per hour, right about this point, right here. So once my train clears that point, I'm going to begin accelerating to 90. So I'm good to start accelerating to 90. Now I do need to keep in mind that I need to brake to 60 miles per hour before I reach the Portal Bridge. It's a 60-mile-an-hour bridge. So I'm going to begin braking for Portal. And we made that with a little bit of time to spare. Still getting sea lights. Now another thing, if the cab signals do fail and those sea lights do illuminate, you will see this C signal illuminated on the EDU. Alright, so now I'm cleared to go up to 90 miles per hour again. This track is 90, and again I am going to be blowing through Secaucus. This train does not stop at Secaucus. because this is a New Jersey station, I gotta do one loud toot of the horn and sound the bell through the entire overbuild. Alright, so we're coming up on West Limits Erie. This is Erie interlocking. Then the interlocking after that will be Allied, and then Bergen, and then we'll get into Penn Station. Do got to keep in mind that the curve after Bergen is 75 miles an hour. And then at the tunnel portal, it turns into 60. And I noticed that Dovetail Games did put in the approach permanent speed limit signs. We just passed one that said 60. That is in the right spot, so kudos to DTG for that one. And I totally got distracted and missed that curve. 75. So I will keep in mind that I do need to slow down to 60 for the tunnel, the North River tunnels. Alright, so we're going over under the Hudson River, rather. It's almost a straightaway. There are a couple little curves. This curve right here, by the way, does not exist. This is still straight right here. I don't know what they did. But the alignment of the tunnels is all... It's not a huge deal, but it's just something I want to point out. Alright, so this is the signal at CP mid. And what that is, it's kind of the approach signal for Penn Station. It's 1.5 miles out from Penn Station. It's the only signal in these tunnels. Besides that signal, the rest of this tunnel is cab signals only. So it's Rule 562 territory. Cab signaling without fixed wayside signals. So we just crossed into New York. That was the boundary between New Jersey and New York. So we're about to come into Penn Station. We're almost at A interlocking. The ditch lights kind of do light up the track a little bit, not too much. Again, the signals are messed up. I'm going to ignore them. Not a big deal. that's all there is to it, guys. Once Dovetail Games works out the kinks with the speed limits, the signals, ATC, and access, I'm sure that we'll be able to operate this just like I did, but with the proper supervision and all that from ATC and access. So if you got any questions for me, just, you know where to find me. Discord group, Dovetail Games forums, just send me a message, hit me up if you got questions. But I think that's it for now. That's really all I can showcase. Alright, take care, guys.